Hello, welcome to the workshop. You've caught me doing some cabinet scraping, and that brings us to a good point. The cabinet scraper, one of the most versatile and the most cheapest tool that you can ever have in the workshop. So you're probably thinking, what do cabinet scrapers do? Well, what they are is a little miniature plane. You can scrape and get a shaving just like when you're planing, but it's very fine and very controlled. So when you have cranky grain, perfect. If you've got to clean off some glue, if you've got to scrape something back, a surface back to match another surface, if you want to dress a whole tabletop, a cabinet scraper will do that job. So you can buy just one single rectangular cabinet scraper. You can also buy a set from Crown, which comes with the standard rectangular one and a shaped one for doing concave and convex surfaces, and a shaped one for various hollowing and shaping styles. They also produce a little tiny kit of small shaped scrapers. These are much thinner and much more flexible and very, very handy for lots of small, very fine pieces of work. I've got here a lovely piece of European maple. It's the inside surface of an arch top guitar, the back. This area has to be flat before the carving can commence. So it has to be nicely levelled off. I've just glued it up, and we can use the cabinet scraper to just remove a little bit of excess material. The cabinet scraper is very simple to use. Your two thumbs lock in behind the blade, your fingers are in front, you apply a little bit of pressure so you create a slight bend or curve, and then you just push the blade across the surface. If you're creating shavings, then you've done a good job sharpening your cabinet scraper and it's working. If you're creating a lot of dust, you need to go back and look at the sharpening. So that's how the cabinet scraper works. And these Crown cabinet scrapers are quite thick, they're 0.8, which is really handy if you want to use them flat, because sometimes there might be a little bit of glue and you just want to scrape quite flat. You can use that in that way. So not only do you curve it to get it to cut, but you can keep it flat and just remove a little bit of material. The curved gooseneck scraper is quite a versatile scraper. It can be used on all sorts of shaped items, and when I build electric guitars I use these, especially if it has a carved top. I'll scrape to finish off. Obviously on the arch top guitar, and in the cradle here I have the back of an arch top guitar, one that we hollowed out with the cut saw tool, if you remember that from a previous video. And as we shape this, we can then scrape, and this little scraper can remove a lot of material in quite a short time, and it leaves a very nice smooth surface. Fantastic. And I mean, I can keep going like this for ages, and eventually the whole thing will be shaped down to the size that I want. But also Crown offer this little set of 4, and these are quite versatile as well. The first one is a small rectangular one, and I use this for scraping away any glue that is in the way. And you can see how this little scraper could just clean off a glue surface perfectly. There is a small curved gooseneck scraper, and it does a beautiful little fine job of creating shapes. There's also the concave convex one, and this little one does the same sort of job. And there is also an elliptical one, and that does a very smooth, fine job of creating shavings. Bear in mind that European maple was quite hard, so this is doing a fantastic job. In my workshop, I use the card cabinet scraper a lot. It's a very versatile tool for me, and especially when it comes to the binding of a guitar, because that binding, you can scrape that away, and you can't see this beautiful shaving that's coming off, but you know, once the cabinet scraper is nice and sharp, you can really remove some material, but in a very smooth way. The finish is superb. And once you've scraped a bit, then you've only got to just do a bit of a light sand and it's done. I also use it on the sides, and the advantage of the crown cabinet scraper, which is 0.8 of a millimetre thick, is that it stays quite straight. I was telling you before that when you use it, you bend it, but in some cases you don't want to bend it, you want it flat, and this is certainly that kind of case. And so we can use the card scraper, spreading our fingers out to keep it all even, and we can remove material from both the binding and the sides by working it like this. There's a little bit of glue coming off there, and a little bit of the sides, and a little bit of the binding. And we just want to be able to work it nice and flat, keeping the sides flat as possible. So that's it. This is the crown burnishing tool. To sharpen a cabinet scraper, you need a good burnishing tool. What I generally do is just give it a very light coat of machine oil. In this case, I'm just using a little lemon oil that I've got in the workshop. I've seen people rub them in their hair to get a bit of oil off there, or, you know, rub their finger on their nose and all that sort of thing. You can do whatever you would like to do, but certainly you need just a little whisker of lubrication. And the first job is to flatten off the card cabinet scraper, because it has burrs on it. The burr is what does the work. So literally you simply lay the cabinet scraper flat on a piece of wood and rub your burnishing tool over the cabinet scraper so that it flattens off that burr. So that burr is now flattened out. And the next step is to file the cabinet scraper, and this is the secret in the filing. Now literally you just want to try and make sure that you hold the file at 90 degrees and literally run the file across the surface of the edge of the cabinet scraper. You can even then put the file flat on the cabinet scraper and balance it so it's at 90 degrees and just push it backwards and forwards. That way you ensure that the line is dead straight. And then here's the secret weapon, folks. It's called draw filing. You need to put the file at 90 degrees to the card cabinet scraper and then just gently push forwards, and you are draw filing. Draw filing is very, very light and very smooth. We're just removing a very fine amount of material. Now, a quick and dirty way of sharpening your card cabinet scraper is when you get to that point, you can literally put a burr on there, and you can hold your burnisher at just a few degrees off horizontal and roll it forward and create a burr. Okay, so that will cut. But the whole secret to the cabinet scraper is to make that top edge and the sides perfectly rectangular, and to have a very neat, sharp edge on both of those corners, because it's that edge that gets burred that creates the cutting edge. That's your cutting edge. So the crisper that line is, the smoother that is, the better. So if you want to take your cabinet scrapers up a level in sharpening, then you can use the Waterstones and literally flatten it off. The secret to flattening it off is to try and get your fingers, as many fingers on there as you can, to keep that edge flat so that it just is being dressed without, if you just have two fingers, you might just sharpen that bit instead of the whole edge. So you're trying to get fairly even weight on that whole side, and then you can even very carefully put the cabinet scraper across the stone and hold it at 90 degrees and just lightly dress the surface edge. So it's all about, as I said before, creating that corner, that very neat sharp corner. Now I'm using an 800 stone there, and we could just burr that up now, but let's go even one more step finer. Let's go to the 6000 and do the same thing again. So we can just lightly dress the edges of the cabinet scraper, try and get as many fingers on there as possible to keep that edge flat. You can make a jig to do this. Just cut a slot in a bit of wood that will hold it at 90 degrees for you. I have such a jig, but honestly by the time you've got it out, you're just as better off to do it by eye. And I'm sure you guys have great eyes and you can do this. Now we'll take this nice edge and we'll burnish it, and we'll give this card scraper the test. Okay folks, here's the shootout. Let's see what happens. This is the rough and ready, the quick sharpening technique, and it's working. Now let's try the dressed edge. That's producing a much nicer shaving. It even feels better under my thumbs. So there you have it. You can buy these cabinet scrapers from Timbercon, either in the Perth store or if you're here in Melbourne, in the Melbourne shop. If you come shopping, you might see me there. If you're online, click on the links below and it may take you directly to the spot where you can buy yourself a nice little set of Crown cabinet scrapers. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.